If you're a fan of G.I. Joe, you might want to hear what we have to talk about today, because this is a special edition of the Toy Connections online podcast. Not a live stream today. We've got this pre-recorded because we're going to throw this up on a separate date sometime in the future compared to the day that we are recording. But some of you may have heard, and for those of you who haven't, Devil's Due Publishing, who had done a lot of previous comic titles in the past, including G.I. Joe of the 2000s, is launching a new independent comic title known as the Disavowed. My understanding, and our guest will correct me if I'm wrong, they're partnering with another publishing company known as Massive Publishing, and they're going to be throwing this up and getting backers involved into this G.I. Joe-esque story. Now, I caveat it with G.I. Joe because this is largely a toy related YouTube channel. However, I've been advised by people at Massive Publishing that this is more like G.I. Joe crossed over with The Boys. And of course, those of you who do watch The Boys on Amazon Prime and whatever seasons happen to be available, I'm only up to season 3. I know I'm not caught up on season 4. You might be interested in this. But to talk more about this directly today would be the founder of Devil's Due Publishing, a person I've been a fan of since the early part of the 2000s, and he's here to talk, so I'm really excited today. Josh Blaylock of Devil's Due, welcome to Toy Connections, my friend.
Hey, Ken, thank you for having me, man.
Hey, no problem whatsoever. I know we were talking a little bit a few minutes before we started the stream, and I really wish I could have walked over and shaken your hand at Joe Fest. Yeah, my friends Matthew and Hans walked over and they met you, and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot to go back because I was right there at the 3D Joe's booth. You were busy, then you walked away, and then I forgot to go back. Then I had to go back to my booth, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, I guess there's always 2025.
So. You know what, dude? That's like a sign of how popular Joe Fest has gotten, because it's like it's packed in there. It's it's not like the old days. It's great to see. So there's so much going on. It's easy to get buried.
Absolutely, and hopefully you are. I was very aggressively trying to ask if you plan to be there next year or not. That's what I was actually trying to ask.
Sure, yeah. The way they do that show is unlike any other show, though. It took me a couple years to even figure out how they don't have like the guests set up kind of like most shows do. A lot of them are brought out by sponsors who are actually just vendors and retailers. Very, very like, more like toy fair kind of stuff, like a fairgrounds toy show that has turned into this like large convention now with all this stuff going on. So the great dudes, Josh and Roger at After Action Report, who made all these amazing collector guides about all of the Joe comics ever produced, they brought me out the last 2 years. So I don't have any plans solidified yet, but I definitely plan on being there.
Awesome. Now, can you talk a little bit about your backstory growing up with whatever era of G.I. Joe you grew up in, though I can kind of guess which one that was, and maybe how the series of The Boys plays into your life and your interests?
Oh, yeah. The Disavowed is it's the story about like the United Five quasi-corporate task force, government funded, that existed in the 1980s. The sort of was like not a very great kept secret and got exposed throughout the internet in the 90s. And their battle against this supposed self-help motivational group turned cult, eventually turned full-on domestic terrorist called Komodo, with esoteric leanings. And it's about these flashbacks to what happened back then, and it gets crazy. And there's people with laser guns and over the top action and everything. And now for some reason in the modern day, there's still crazy stuff happening, but it's a lot more like wrapped up, sort of like sanitized, but even more in other ways more effed up. And that's sort of where the whole like explanation that Massive's got with Joe Meets the Boys. It's the first ever deconstruction of an archetype like these 80s cartoons and action teams that we haven't really seen before, because it's so common in superheroes, to have Invincible or The Boys or Watchmen or Kick-Ass or any of that stuff where right away like, oh, that's supposed to be Batman, that's basically supposed to be Superman, but there's a twist to it, and it's just like normal now. But this is our first time around where these comics have been these characters have been around. This hasn't really been done that much yet, if at all. So my I got into G.I. Joe like the rest of everybody, every other Gen Xer my age. It was, the cartoon was on, the toys were out. I was a little late to the I wasn't there at the very beginning of the toy line and the comics. I definitely got into the toys and the cartoon, and then fell in love with it. And then the comics were at, I think it was 7-Eleven or some convenience store. I got it, and we were probably already on like issue 60, and I that it might have been sooner than that, because I really do, I can't remember exactly, but I do remember clearly opening it up, and I saw that they weren't using lasers; they're actually using real bullets, and it felt more real and adult at the time. And I was like, "Dad, they're actually killing the Cobras in this. Can I get this?" So we picked that up, and then I was like hooked and started buying all those back issues of it. Like, you could get collected editions at the grocery store to catch up on all like the back issues in like a little digest size. Just that was it. I was in. And from there, rode the whole wave until everything kind of stopped. The whole brand really kind of like puttered out at the very beginning of the 90s. And then the comic trudged along until they just finally wrapped it up in 94.
That's a great backstory. I mean, at least you say you got into it a bit late, but some of us, like, it was more like issue 90 by the time I even knew what that comic was. So it's like, to me, you still got in early.
Yeah, I mean, I was into like, I was into drawing and creating stories since I was like 2 years old. I mean, I was obsessively always wanting to be like, when I was like little kid, I wanted to be an animator. I didn't really know the words for it, but that's what I wanted to do. And so by the time I was like 12, I was writing letters to Disney asking like how you do that. And it's along the way, all I was doing was drawing and writing comics all the time. And my dad always had a couple comics laying around. So it was always in the house, even though he wasn't like a big collector. But both my parents were really creative. And I was like, wait a minute, comic books is what I want to do. And then I started following that. And then I got into G.I. Joe. I immediately had to create, like, as a 8-year-old, like, USGI, and make my own little stories. But it was that's, I think I have like over here actually somewhere in the office, I have binders of my stories I made, like notebooks full for about a 3-year story of all these old little kid comics.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. And it sounds like you got to live the dream, because unless I'm missing something, I believe that Devil's Due was founded in 1999, right? Is that correct?
I mean, it's always vague. Was it 99 or 2000? I'm even not sure, because
Okay.
I kind of puttered around with the idea. I created a logo and created it for like a creative studio in 2000 to publish comics under, and also do freelance,
I gotcha.
creative work.
Yeah.
I'd been self-publishing comics. I started in '96 with another imprint right out of high school. I was I was just putting stuff out, distributing it. So
I see. I guess I was trying to say that it seems like it's the 25th anniversary this year of Devil's Due is kind of where I was going with that, but kind of is, right? So
almost. 20. It's no, that'll definitely, I'd say, like, it's a nice number of 2025 would be a good 25th anniversary.
It's the perfect time to launch the Disavowed. Now, I mean, I'm sure you get a lot of questions about the Devil's Due publishing run of G.I. Joe. That started out, how did that happen? Because it seemed like it was published under Image for a few issues. I'm sure you get this question a lot. Then it's all of a sudden when I was buying it, all of a sudden the Devil's Due logo showed up, and I was like, oh, who are these guys? How did that?
Like, nobody knew who the hell I was at the time, unless you had been in the indie comic book circuit. So I'd formed Devil's Due, the company got the rights to G.I. Joe. Then I went to Image Comics and set up the deal to publish it, because and I've told this story a number of times, a lot of places, so I won't bore people again. But yeah, back then, like, nobody wanted to do anything from the 80s. They all thought that people in charge who were like, even just like 30 years old at the time, they just didn't get it. There had never been a retro thing like this happen before. So they just were like, nobody wants to do that. So you had to really fight to get anybody to pay attention and understand what demand there was for it. And if you were into it and you were younger, it was just like screaming at you how obvious this was, that everyone was dying for this stuff to come back. So I knew through a lot of other experience that I had to go secure that, whatever it took. I had to get that myself. Otherwise, the best shot I had would be like educating and explaining a person at a company why they want it, and then they're just going to pat me on the head and say, "Hey, thanks, kid. See you later," and then they'd be off to the races. So that's how that happened. And it was launched in September 2001, and was a lot of crazy excitement before that online, blowing up on the old message boards and all that stuff.
I remember that. Yeah,
and then we were
So I'm hearing you correctly. You needed Image's help to kind of get the word out because Devil's Due was still new at the time. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I had planned to be able to do it myself, because I had accounts with Diamond and another distributor at the time, Capital, and well, they were gone by then. But I was ready to publish it myself. Clearly, I wouldn't have had the backing and ability or anything, and so in hindsight, in a very short hindsight, it was very clear Image was necessary or some publisher with deeper pockets. It could have been anybody, honestly.
Right.
Was the right, but they had the right deal. They were very hands off, and you could just kind of do your thing. And then, yeah.
I mean, I was just a bit too young for that Marvel run, and by the time I was old enough to get into it, there were so many issues I didn't know where to start. And I was early in my 20s when I started getting into this Devil's Due run. So for me, that was my G.I. Joe comic in the early 2000s. Like, there was a lot that y'all did there, and I'm not sure whose idea it was to give Duke the Black Ops CIA style background.
That was me.
That was you. And I mean, I've talked about it lots on this channel. I even went as far as to make like a 16-17 minute video about his Black Ops background. You know what? I'll even send it to you on Instagram, because one of the things that I liked about it was it showed that, I mean, Duke was always a bit more hard-nosed in the Marvel Comics run, but a lot of us grew up with that sort of all-American, kind of like alpha male type that was in the Sunbow cartoon. So to see G.I. Joe disband for 7 years, and he comes back and he's darker, right? And he's got a bit of an edginess to him, right? And they say he went into Black Ops, and he's doing things off the books, and he's doing things not so much behind General Hawk's back, but because he knows things and has certain clearances that are above G.I. Joe's head, and he gets in trouble with them, right? In fact, I've got an image right here I'm going to pull up before we go into the disavowed stuff, right? He's sitting here going, I think this is issue 31 or 32. It's like, you asked to see me, Hawk? Come on in, Duke, because he's about to get reamed out for something that happened in Sierra Gordo, if you recall this issue, right?
Yeah.
And what I loved about it, and it flies a bit under the radar, is a lot of people complained that Duke as a second in command, as a sergeant rank, didn't make sense for G.I. Joe. How did it go Hawk then Duke if he was only a master sergeant? And I rationalized this as, well, if he went into CIA and had Black Ops, and G.I. Joe's kind of not following the military structure anyway, and he's now special agent, CIA agent Hauser, to me, that adds to that rank. That adds to that clearance level. It adds to all the reasons why he could be a
conveniently vague enough that you can just have fun with it. Yeah.
Because what you did was really brilliant in the battle files, is rather than having his rank show up, his military rank show up, you put rank classified. And I'm just like, I love it. I love it. And for anyone who hasn't read these comics, they're freaking amazing. This, followed by the America's Elite 36 issue run, just really pulls at my heartstrings. And God, was I about to add a little something to that? Maybe the thought will come back to me a little bit later on.
Well,
you're saying?
Well, it was kind of inspired by and I've come around to have a fuller appreciation of the Duke character, but he was literally, he was created to be sort of like the cookie cutter, clean, quote unquote, all American, blonde, white, apple pie, figure that represented the more closest thing to the classic G.I. Joe, 12-inch guy. That's sort of what the vibe was. I'm definitely paraphrasing and stretching a little bit there, but so I don't get reamed by the hardcore fans, but that's kind of what it was set up. Larry already had, Hawk leading the team and everything. Even in the original comics, Hawk was blonde, and they bring Duke in, and then they ended up sort of changing Hawk later more. But so I think if I have it right, Larry was kind of like had to work Duke in, and then he
That's
did.
what I heard. Yeah.
But like, whereas the cartoon, you're told from the jump, hey, it's Duke. He's he's the field commander, he's the leader, and every kid's just like, will that guy get out of the way so I can see Snake Eyes, or so I can see Shipwreck, and he just he was like kind of lame, and then so sort of out of that, I wanted to play with like, let's give him an edge, and on a more deeper story level, it's like, look, he is the by the book guy. He believes 100% in the mission. He's going to follow orders. He's going to do what's said, and that would lead into like, hey, if the mission requires this, I'm going to do this, and it kind of takes you down that path of some of the Black Ops stuff later, and then so it's kind of like he's such not a rebel. He ends up being this like clandestine kind of badass figure by doing. And then Mark Powers came in later with who I actually co-write a lot of stuff with now still. Mark Powers came in and added the element that actually all of this part of Duke's personality is his rebellion. His father is this like, super progressive protesting hippie, like ex-hippie dude who's like still walking around with his like Jimmy Buffett shirt and, getting arrested all the time, protesting and all that. So that kind of really was the first time you got a peek at like some more of Duke's background. So
I loved it. I waited 20 plus years to thank you for this particular aspect, because there were even some issues in the Frontline series that flash back to some of his Black Ops missions and some of the stuff he had to see that was quite disturbing, that helped shape him when the team reunited in the early part of the 2000s. And that edginess added so much to because the teams couldn't trust him anymore. They were saying things like, "You're not Duke anymore. What happened?" And I'm getting chills just thinking about reading it the first time. And between him and the addition of Kamakura, because you all kind of brought him into the mainstream, right?
Yeah, that's my baby. That's my little baby. I got actually. Where's the? Yeah, they finally. That's my guy. So I created him literally out of the idea that I wanted him to be a. I was really focused more on the. Oh, there's a good shot. Focused more on Snake Eyes being a master now and having an apprentice, and he was sort of a derivative of that. And it just sounded like it'd be a cool idea to have that be, Sean Collins, the kid that wrote the letter to Snake Eyes at the end of the Marvel run, and then he just sort of took on a life of his own immediately. Like instantly, all the readers were like, that guy's awesome. We need more of him. And I think now Kamakura has been made into something like, I don't know, like 14 or 15 or 20 different toys. And he's been in, I think, 3 different animated shows. And
so you officially created him.
Oh, I designed him from scratch. Everything. Yeah, I was just talking to someone earlier today. I'm not sure if I sold it or if I still have the original art the sketch I drew to design him, because he intentionally was supposed to be like more of a traditional looking ninja, but he had the green elements and colors to feel more like an actual Joe, and it was sort of, there's even a joke in there about like Ninja Force in the very first couple issues, because we're trying to reset things and tone down the ninja aspects again, but yeah.
Beachhead even I think Beachhead, it might even be this issue right here where he calls him the Green Power Ranger or something like that.
Yeah.
makes that joke. See, because Kamakura, he's got no fear. Like there were times there were like Snake Eyes was away from the base. For people who haven't read the run, Storm Shadow breaks in and Kamakura pulls out his sword. He's like, "You ain't getting past me," and
and I think he gets his ass kicked, right?
He did, but he was the only Joe that lasted more than 3 seconds against Storm Shadow. Like I've gone on about that on this channel as well, because I'm a huge Kamakura fan. Like when the classified figure was released, a lot of people were like, "I never read that run. Who is he?" And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. This is Kamakura." You know what I mean? I'm like, so Snake Eyes, like the Karate Kid, he's now Daniel-san as an older man, and Kamakura is like the kids that train under him. I'm trying to draw that analogy from Cobra Kai and the Karate Kid series, and people are like, "Ken, that analogy is not landing." I'm like, "Well, I tried to sell y'all on it." What I do like is that you've gone with the name The Disavowed for your new comic series, and I don't know if this is a coincidence or not. Maybe you know where I'm going with this.
Oh no.
IDW, when they reprinted these now apparently non-canon Devil's Due issues, called that run, the reprinted run of your run was the
I'm shocked.
Disavowed.
No
And I'm
comment.
like, and I'm
No
sitting
comment.
there, no comment. All right. I'm just like, I love it. So when I saw that name, I was like, I know that, you know. So anyway.
That it's fun, like people who know like a reference there like get it immediately. So it's that's one little fun thing about it. But it also has to do with the story. So the Disavowed really, without spoiling too much, it is about former members of the United Five and Komodo who now work together for the common mission, and the reasons why, like what led to that and why they would ever unify and what they're really up against now. So that's who the Disavowed really are.
And I'm going to get into that very momentarily here. I'm glad to know that there's actually meaning behind it as well. Like there's almost like a double meaning behind it. Eventually, I think it was 2008 where DDP ceded the GI Joe license over to IDW. I think that's the timeline.
Yeah, we lost it. We did it for like seven long years, and then then it went its way as licenses do to another publisher.
Yeah.
Just before the movie stuff was about to come out and all that.
Was it hard to pivot after you lost the license? Because that was kind of your baby, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely totally sucked. But at the same time, when those things kind of happen, like there's a lot of stress and a lot of things involved with like dealing with these big companies and all the approvals and everything, and it ebbs and flows. You know, sometimes some years are extremely difficult to work with the companies. Other times it goes a lot smoother, and there's always back and forth on what you're allowed to do because they have to approve everything. It's their baby, and so no, that was definitely not fun, but at the same time, I mean, sales weren't like, it wasn't like we were raking in millions of dollars and any more from those books because that's another part of the trend. There's sort of always needs to be something that reboots it. The part I kind of wish I do regret is the whole time we had it, I was always looking, we were always just like ready for something to hit. Like they put out the Sigma 6 series, that before that there was Spy Troops, and there's all these things. We were always at the ready, always ready to support it, always had new content ready to go, and then it just always kind of fizzled. So the only thing really that had the fans engaged and kept them engaged was our comics. So kind of sucked when the movie was about to come out. Like we just were like, all right, they're like, all right, later. And it's like, well, that was supposed to be the thing that would have been our boost, and it turned out it actually wasn't. So
it does. I find it does get lost a bit as a middle child between the IDW run and the Marvel run. So for whatever influence I have, I always tell people that should not get lost as the middle child in between. And it is unfortunate because by the time the 25th anniversary GI Joe launch of A Real American Hero with the 4-inch line came in, you were deep in your second run already with America's Elite. For a lot of people who may not know what I'm talking about, that initial run that Josh had ran for 43 issues, right? And then you rebooted with America. You did a soft relaunch with America's Elite, GI Joe America's Elite.
Yeah, that was our 36.
36 plus an issue 0 and some specials, so et cetera, right? And that was under Joseph Colton was now in command over instead of General Hawk, right?
We did something around the same number as many individual issues as Marvel did. If you add them all, the miniseries, all of the Declassified series and Snake Eye series and all that stuff. So it's a lot of stuff. I know Skybound is supposed to reprint compendiums after they do the Marvel one. They're supposed to do Devil's Due compendiums, is what I read. I'd
love it.
No one's told me this for sure, but I think that's going to probably like surprise a lot of people who don't know. They're going to be like, that's just a lot of shit.
And there is. Because even the frontline, the GI Joe frontline issues, you had like 16 or 18 issues. That was amazing, right?
Yeah, and that was great because we had all these different artists. There's so many artists that worked and contributed on stuff. They're like huge names now. Cover artists and things like that. So that was great, and a lot of legends too, like Mike Zeck, Mike Golden. I actually got Michael Golden on a Disavowed cover, which was a big win. So I mean, I really. what kind of was interesting. So you were there, like your excitement, is palpable. Like as far as like, this was a big deal. Like this took over comic shops. Like it literally ignited the whole 80s trend back then. Like I was always joke, like we literally did a mall signing. Like that's as close as you're gonna get to like 90s Image Comics formation days, that kind of hype that you wouldn't see again probably until like the Walking Dead phenomenon. So it really took off, but it was all before social media. So we literally ended our license in like 2008, just as like Facebook starting to become a public thing, taking off, and Twitter and all that. So if you weren't there and you just started picking up stuff like a few years into IDW, it's just like, oh yeah, that was a thing I heard about, and now people are rediscovering, and they're like, oh crap, this was. They're like kind of getting almost like, I know some collectors are almost getting overwhelmed, realizing how much stuff there is, thinking it was going to be an easy thing to collect. And
because most people mention the 43 issue run, and they might go, oh yeah, there was America's Elite, so you got total of like whatever 70 or 75 issues, or maybe math's wrong, maybe it's 80 issues, and then they think, oh yeah, it should be easy. Snake Eyes Declassified, Master and Apprentice, G.I. Joe Frontline, Battle Files, you got a lot there. And you can hear me kind of like fanboying, and I almost take it like personally when people say, "Oh, which one was Devil's Due?" And I almost go, "No, you're missing out." And you can hear me. Yeah, you're right. It's very palpable. And like I'd said to you before we jumped on, these names like yourself, Tim Seeley, Brandon Giroir, Mike Golden, etc. They were just pie in the sky names for me, and now everyone's kind of bolstering careers, and it's been good. Yeah, I know I spent basically the first half of this interview shaping the path of Devil's Due and where we are today, but we are getting to the Disavowed. And sorry for the fans watching here who want to hear Josh talk.
Oh no, please stop telling me how awesome things were. It's terrible.
Yeah, I know. It's like, because I can't help but fanboy over and gush over the Devil's Due comic run, right? But so you've got the Disavowed coming out later this year. And you've touched a little bit. That was going to be one of my questions about the concept of it, but you touched on that a little bit earlier. So it's G.I. Joe meets the boys, and I'm just gonna go ahead and pull up some imagery here. I just got this directly off of what was gonna be your backer kit, which I know you might change from using BACKERKIT to launch this now, but I've lost my screen.
Maybe I just mentioned as a possibility, yeah. But one of the things that's got, I'm actually not full on the publisher on this yet. Partner with a great group with Massive, so really looking forward to being more of the creator on this one, and they can make decisions like that.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to touch on that. How is the partnership with Massive work on this?
They're the publisher, and I have been publishing for, I started by default as a teenager, and then I've been doing it my whole adult life, and I really want to shift with Devil's Due being a studio. I focused on the creative side of things, partnering with different publishers depending on like what the vibe of the book is and who makes sense. And I really was impressed. Massive's only been around for a couple of years, and they came out of the gates innovating, doing everything different than everyone else. They sold hundreds of thousands of comics in their first year, a lot of it through Whatnot and live streams, and then they immediately got set up as a premier publisher in like the main distributor catalog. And it's they're a lean and mean crew, and they're really super busy, but like when they approach something and put their creativity into it on their marketing side, they approach it differently than everyone else. So that's what I liked about them. It was very in sync with how I think about things, and I've always tried to do things a little differently. So props to them for that. And then also as a creator, hopefully, like I'm someone who's like just spoiled by simple things that other creators maybe take for granted, like the fact that someone dealt with the convention setup, or just handled like setting up interviews and stuff like this. I've never had that before, because I've always been usually I'm not only just creating my own stuff as the publisher, I'm also been responsible for setting those things up or having someone set up for other creators. And now,
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Massive is going to be doing the publishing, whereas Devil's Due is going to focus on the creative side. If I heard you correctly, okay, got it. Yeah. I mean, this isn't about anything I've done, but when we did with our Delta 17 toy line with the comic, that released at Joe Fest there, it was very difficult to deal with the publishing side of things. Like, you can write until you're blue in the face, you can create till you're blue in the face, and then the publishing side is like, what, and there's a whole nother task that's involved. So that can't be underestimated. I've only been through it for the one time, and it was already kind of a thing all to itself. So I'm glad you're able to get someone to do that while you kind of focus on the creative side of the thing you want to launch. And shout out to Chris Yates, the press guy over at Massive, for helping set up this interview. Him and your assistant there, Jen.
Yeah, cool. Appreciate the shout outs.
So I've kind of got the main banner here pulled up. Is there anything you want to kind of want to highlight as far as
this? So this image, fun enough, speaking about the old days, this is an image by Steve Kurth, who drew the whole first half of my initial of the whole first year of the whole launch. And I hit him up like, hey, here's this thing I'm working on. Would you like to do, a cover? He comes back with this insane battle scene. Like, just, he totally dove into it, and it blew me away. This is a shot of, you're getting inundated here with on the left, you've got Komodo, and on the right, you've got the United Five, and a good classic battle scene. Still, though, without giving away too much about what the story is really about. So this was great.
That's cool. And by United Five, it's not because there's 5 heroes, right? It's because
it's the 5 branches of the armed forces.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Which does, I have not forgotten about Space Force, but that actually works into part of the part of it later. But yeah, the U5.
Okay, no, that's
the
cool.
the U5ers has become a little moniker.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're still working out whether or not this is going to be on BACKERKIT, Kickstarter, or whatever. When we do, are you allowed to say right now, how many issues are we backing when we back it right off the bat?
Oh yeah. It's starting as a 5-issue miniseries. And I fully have plans to go way beyond this. I want this thing to be around for years. Starting off 5-issue series. And this is going to be in comic shops too. This is definitely going to be distributed through the stores and all that. So crowdfunding is it's here if you want to jump in right away. If you want to get all the extra crazy cool stuff, I think everyone kind of knows the drill now. Yeah, it'll so we don't have that, therefore we don't have the actual in-store release date set yet. We're in the middle of working on the series now. We want to make sure we're well into it before we solicit anything, so the book's can actually come out on time. And yeah, that's awesome. That's that.
Mic drop. So right now you're still working out the final dates about when it's going to launch.
Yeah.
So I know there were some people expecting it to launch on the 20th of August, but you mentioned before we jumped on that's going to get pushed back a little bit.
Yeah. When you set up the pre-launch page to start sending people there, they forced you to pick a launch date.
Right.
So I think Massive just probably pushed it back as far as they could, and then it just needs to be updated. So that does need to be made clear to people, though. We're definitely doing this as soon as possible, but it's in the meantime, though, the whole point is telling people about it, and if it sounds cool to you, please share it. And we want to get as many eyeballs on it as possible before we launch, because
absolutely,
it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people we have ready to go, the better the first day is. Those first days are so important to the campaigns.
Absolutely.
This is an awesome picture of Komodo by. No, I really should be leading off here with my partner in the project. Is on the artist side is Pop Mhan.
I saw
Pop's done Pop's a lot of fans know him from all the work he's done for Marvel and DC. Recent years, he did Raven. He's worked on a lot of He-Man stuff. He just finished another thing. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say he's worked on, like a horror thing that everybody would know. But yeah, no, he just really killed it on these. I really, just like I usually do and stuff. I had such a vision for this. I had to get in. I did all the designs for the initial characters. I really wanted to make sure we were referencing the right things, but also making things different in the right way. And then I was just been feeding those to Pop, and then he turns around and draws them better and makes them more awesomer. So yeah, I love this picture though. This is just a great shot of some of the key Komodo characters. We have our leader, Lord Anon. He's the leader of this esoteric cult that sort of grows and grows and grows. And I guess kind of imagine you have like a Hydra or a Cobra or something like that, but it's throwing elements of certain like religious cult that believes in like maybe like alien influence that is very powerful. And you know, that like that's sort of like the inspiration for this. But we've got, I could just go through some of the names because it's fun. On the right, we've got Mercy. We have Mercy and Maria Cantillon, who they just call the taxmen. They're they handle the books for Komodo. We have Highland and Fatal. We've got Dr. Shaman. We've got Tasmania, and we have all kinds of different guardsmen and troops for Lord Anon. And that's what this is. So you're instantly thrown into the idea that there's this big past and there's this world, and but we're taking you in it through the eyes of a kid in the late 90s who is the child of one of these former members of the United Five. And you're sort of brought into it that way, and then realize like, oh, just about like a decade and a half earlier there was crazy stuff going on, and then you follow it into the present day and what's still happening now. And it's kind of like, it's not just a deconstruction of like on the fun level. Yeah, you can make your G.I. Joe or your 80s action thing and just make it more violent and more extreme and gratuitous and sexy or whatever. That's fun, you know, and that is what these kind of things are about to a level, but it has to be something different. You know, you have to, within a very short amount of time, it needs to become its own thing. That's sort of just like the setup. So there's a lot of parallels in this that that play off of like the nostalgia phenomenon itself, you know, like this team being around back in the day and still being around now, and like it won't end. It just continues, seems to be like immortal or something. Like that sort of plays into some of the themes of the story. And also we deal with these sort of crazy sociopathic powerful people in Komodo and in the military and everything that just won't quit. They won't secede power. And that ties in with a lot of stuff happening, not just in politics, but in corporate America and society in general. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with that while getting to tell a cool story where, yeah, there's a bunch of cool soldiers and ninjas and crazy supervillain types with shooting the shit out of each other with laser guns. And for some reason, there's all these like laser weapons in the 80s that aren't around anymore. But, you know, it's almost like when you kind of like when you hear your grandparents tell a story about their youth, about some crazy experience that happened, and then you know, kind of catches you off guard. Like that sounds like that probably was problematic and shouldn't have happened. Also, it sounds insane. You can never do that today. Like
Absolutely. We've all had those stories.
Yeah, because that's kind of what appeals to, like, let's say you kind of know what, you know, you kind of know this 80s stuff, you know, the G.I. Joe stuff, whatever, but you go in, you weren't there for it, you know, maybe your dad's obsessed with it, or you were just a little bit on the tail end of it. To you, that's kind of what it is. It's this crazy older thing that's fun, and you think you like it, but you're not like a big huge nerd for it. You want to be able to read a news story that taps into that. So that's kind of what I want to play with here too, make it accessible to both a new reader or also someone who's going to get some of the deepest, nerdiest references possible.
Love it. Well, I mean, a lot of people are going to point out the Magneto-esque helmet. I know he's got a logo there that makes him look a little bit different, but you see that right away, you're like, ha, I'm interested.
Yeah. You know what? Right away, too, it took on its life of its own. Like every artist draws they're tweaking the helmet a little bit, and I'm fine with it, because it's like that helmet actually plays a very important part in the character, and Lord Anon himself.
What I'm going to try to do is, as long as it's up on the BACKERKIT page, and I can update the link later, I'm going to leave the link in the description of the video for the 8-page preview that you've put in, because while I can hear about it and look at art, it was that 8-page preview that kind of drew me in, because you kind of jump between the timelines. You have what the United Five are doing, fighting Komodo in 1989, and then years later, you've got the son of the main character kind of discovering the old story of what his dad went through, right? Which we can touch on.
The first page literally starts off with kids in the 90s on bicycles. So like, I think it's kind of like not what people expect when they open the first page.
No, not at all. So is this villain side where you plan to harness like the concept of the boys a little bit?
I think it gets a little more into, I mean, these are not squeaky clean, perfect like agents, like with G.I. Joe and any kids property. Like you had to have the good guys be the good guys. And one important thing with Joe was like, that was really smart about it was it was never about the government wasn't perfect. The military wasn't perfect, but it was about the soldiers and their commitment to each other and the camaraderie and them trying to do what's right. That's the key. And that's a lot of the, I'm going on a little tangent here, but when people like accuse G.I. Joe of like brainwashing kids or something, it's like comics were actually a lot smarter than that. They were written by a guy who, you know, went through some real shit and wasn't thrilled with everything, you know, like it wasn't like a zombie. So it was very nuanced. This is a different thing. Like these aren't all of the good guys weren't necessarily great. And also though, like in the present day though, like, you know, you've got the different, just got the different generations. So you've got things they might have been doing back then that were like well-intentioned and seemed honorable. And now people questioning that now, but then things being really effed up now. And, you know, so that also just fun that, you know, laser guns actually they actually hit people, and there's lots of evisceration and gore and like there might be some drug use and people getting hyped up before they run into battle if necessary. There might be some crazy stuff going on behind the scenes. There might be like a lot of love triangles and relationships happening that you know, happen in the stress of combat.
So not for children. Okay,
this is definitely not for kids. No.
Yeah, you brought up the heroes, so I threw up some of the heroes.
Less little. I'm gonna say it's not as insane as like. I always say like, hey, look, if you watch an HBO show, or you read like 90% or 50% of any of the books coming out of Image Comics or Boom or anybody, that's what comics are now. You know, it's not for kids.
Anything House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones universe, is so many gray areas about who the heroes are, right? And then if they are pure heroes, they don't always win, and they sometimes lose brutally. So anyway,
this is our introduction, the first appearance you see of the Mantis.
Yeah, I like the way he's posed, and you know, I know who he's an homage to. We don't need to. I think everyone's gonna pick up on that. Just even the pose and everything, I absolutely love it. And below here, you've kind of got some of the other.
Would be Chef and Gadzooks and the Wall.
Yes.
Chef actually like literally has kitchen knives that he brings with him into combat, and he might be a psychopath. The Wall is super fun. He's 1776 on his chest and a big ass Ronald Reagan tattoo on his shoulder and a "Don't Tread on Me" sticker. So we know his Reaganomics vibes. And this is for one of the 1980s 1989 battle.
Yes. I mean, when I look at the Wall over there on the right side, I see Gung Ho meets Hulk Hogan. That's just what I see. I see Suburban Commando Hulk Hogan meets Gung Ho.
You know, it's funny. Some of this stuff was I won't say which, but some of it was intentional and some of it wasn't. And but now the nickname I have for him is Gung Hogan.
I love it. Right. But the throwbacks are good because it's like, which one is he? You know what I mean? Because even in Suburban Commando, Hogan didn't quite dress like that. You know, so but the open vest, like it looks like that. I mean, we know who Chef's name is kind of an homage to, right? And Gadzooks, I mean, he looks a bit different, but you know,
you just gotta have lots of bare-chested dudes running into battle and lots of mustaches.
There you go. Right. So I like what I'm seeing here. And from the 8 pages I saw, and a lot of others have saw, there's a lot to like here. Yeah.
Pop. I just got to shout out Pop on some of the action scenes with the vehicles.
Oh,
That
God,
dude can
yeah.
draw his vehicles, man. Like, and there's an energy to them. You could show up maybe that there's one where like, I don't know. There's this one where one of our lead characters, Dane the Great, is riding riding a 4-wheeler Jeep that's like just busting through. There's another scene with this big giant sort of trailer thing busting through the side of a exit of like a mountain hillside, and there's just like a kinetic energy to it. I had to go back in there, and I was like, Pop, he needs to be running over people. It needs to be more gruesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it right.
Yeah, there's that great double page spread there, where they're attacking the Komodo base. So that symbol, that's actually the Komodo symbol you're seeing on Lord Anon's helmet. It's like the shape of the tower back there, and it all has way more meaning than it needs to have from the lore I have built up.
Absolutely.
So another thing, we're actually treating this so beyond just the story, we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. That we're acting as if the United Five, as if Disavowed, this has always existed. Like this has been around for 40 years. There's fandom for it. There may or may not have been certain series of comics and toys in the past. So, like, it's it's really a fun sort of like a little fun detachment if you're into all this other retro stuff, but like you're inundated with so much of it and trying to keep up with the collections. This is like you get the same feels, but it's also a little crazier. It's a little more adult, and it's just easier to jump into and just have fun with. And there's this other element of like this has this sort of imaginary fandom around it that you may or may not choose to have been a part of. So that's something else we're gonna sort of be able to do because it's really important to me. And this being that's why I'm so glad to be on a toy podcast show like this, because this is where these properties really survive. Just the way like we kept the brand really going strong in comics and really gave it a resurgence while the cartoons were sort of like not really able to get off the ground and the toys were kind of figuring out what to do. And that's what Dark Horse did with Star Wars for like years. They really, that fan base kept it going. The toys do that as well on the indie scene. So, right now for years, it was just like keeping it alive with the collecting of the old stuff. But now there's such incredible work happening in the indie toy maker scene, and on thanks to things like Kickstarter and the Robo Skull toy that's out there, from Skeletron, and then the stuff that's going on with Fresh Monkey Studios and Eagle Force and Big Bad Toy Store. And I mean, there's so much cool shit out there now that is every bit as good as the big companies. And then you go to something like Joe Fest, there's a few thousand people there now, and there's, but the fan base is still, it's really small, but
it's growing.
You've got to get it right there. If you get it right there and you make like 500 people there happy, you've got a winner, and then you can expand it from there.
The Robo Skull has
the
right elements in place to become toy of the year. And whenever I say that to Ben and company, they're like, "Oh, stop it, Ken. Wait till it actually lands." And I'm like, I know, but that's the expectation level of it. Whether you meet it or not, we'll know when it's time. But that's kind of what I tell them about.
I use that. That's a good example to use to compare what I'm kind of trying to capture here with the Disavowed. Like, you don't need to know anything about Robo Skull. It's freaking Robo Skull, and you see it. Like, that's just cool. That I need that thing is badass. I need it in my life. If you want or care, there's a huge history of like what that thing is, where it comes from, and all the going back to all the Action Force days and all that. So it's like it really satisfies both audiences, young and old.
Absolutely.
So props to those dudes.
Big time props to those dudes. So are there any other common questions or things that you want people to be aware of as far as the Disavowed is concerned? Things that keep coming up, or things that you want to make sure people have as talking points and things for them to digest?
I can't really think of it. I'm sure I'll think of it as soon as I soon as we end this. Just follow the BACKERKIT page. Follow Massive has that posted. Also, like you can just follow me directly through Devil's Due mailing list on devilsduestudios.com. I'm on Instagram as Blaylock Comics. I'm on Twitter as Josh Blaylock. Unfortunately, I'm not on Facebook right now. We just had a thing where like my account something happened with getting hacked or something. The account got disabled, and I'm trying to get it back up now. But follow me on the other socials and the email list, and just follow Massive Publishing. Stay tuned. And, we're out there, so hopefully you have a harder time not hearing about it than you do actually, hearing about it when it drops.
Yeah, and I did see your Facebook page go down the other day because I think I liked the post, and then at some point later on that same day, your thing went down. I'm like, did I press the like button wrong?
I just another shout outs to Brian Sauer, who's the head of like Codename Iowa GI Joe convention, and he does a lot of really great stuff for the whole fan community.
Yes.
He's been helping work directly with me on some things. He's really, not just invited me out to a show, but like introduced me to some things and helping me catch up in what's been going on in the specifically the toy world that I might not have been up on, and get up to speed there. He's probably gonna help take over like some of the fan. I'm not putting all this on him yet, but we talked about it today. He might be taking over some of like the fan management because I'm dealing with this Facebook thing. Because when we already had the page up to about 200 people almost very quickly. And now since I'm disabled, it's like every image I posted is just gone. So
I noticed that because I joined, I think the same day or the day before you disappeared. And I'm like, where are all the posts? It says there's 9 comments here, but there's like 4. Right?
Yeah. We'll need help migrating people over to like a newer one, and I'm gonna make sure right away to make people admins on it who aren't just me, so I can if anything happens there, that we're good. And but yes. That's the thing. Like, feel free to like just read this as a straight up comic book series you pick up at the store with your other stuff. But if you're into the scene on a deeper level with like collecting the toys or just playing with some of the fun fake history we're gonna have with this too, stick around because there will be different opportunities to engage there.
So you will be at Assembly Required Codename Iowa in November, I guess then.
Yeah, I was literally talking to Brian in the car on the way to the office today. So
that's awesome.
We're trying to plan on something cool. Like we kind of can't go there and not have something special to have for people. Also, I mean, this one is Iron Grenadier theme this year. So
I saw that. Yeah.
Dude, when Destro came out with the Iron Grenadiers, I think I was about 11. I was just like enamored immediately, just like, these are awesome. Just, you had the gold mask and the troops just look so cool. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever followed Codename Iowa shows. They go so deep on the themes. So like last year was last year was Dreadnoks, which is one reason they brought me out, because I'm really known for writing a lot of the Dreadnought stuff. They actually had grape soda there. They had Yojo Cola. They had little tiny bottles of like those you could also use for the toys. They had the writer of the Cold Slither song, and actually the writer of several of the animated episodes of Sunbow.
Michael Charles Hill.
Yep. And so he was there. They really go into the themes, and that's another reason why I was like, when I got to know Brian better, I was like, you're definitely got to come in and help on the Disavowed here. So we're gonna do some fun stuff with the fandom later.
Awesome. Well, I heard it's a good show because a lot of the old school Joe Guard they go there. A lot of the Joe Fest crowd goes there as well. Cool. So how was San Diego Comic-Con this past July?
Oh, it was great, man. I mean, it's a big, crazy, crowd of madness like it always is. But this was one of the first years I didn't have to really manage the booth all myself. I was there with Massive. Actually, they were in my booth. It just sort of worked out because they're very new, and they had this big booth last year that they had subleased, and then they came in. We were like right by the front. There was a huge disavowed banner there that they put together. The response to the ash cans was fantastic. They produced these amazing metal covers that I would show it right now if I had one, but we sold them to people.
That's a good thing.
It's like a matte finish metal cover. It's like this. Can you see that poster here? This is the disavowed, the United 5 logo on this green background, like just matte finish metal. And then the blood splatter, they came up with this new, the printer came up with a new way to like layer it, and just made it just like really unique. I've never seen anything quite like it. I'm sure now it's going to be on every book's going to use this, but yeah, that was fun. And San Diego is crazy. It's not really a Comic-Con. Everybody knows this by now. It's really all about a lot of Hollywood and stuff, but it's the only show you can go to as a creator, as a comic book professional, and meet and hang out and socialize with so many fellow professionals and editors and publishers all in one spot, especially after hours. There's not a lot of conventions left like that. So that's why I love it.
Awesome. Well, it's overwhelming for like 4 or 5 days, right? So it's just so much going on. But good you got the word out there as well, because that's the right place to, it is a Comic-Con traditionally, right? So yeah. Are you allowed to discuss a pricing structure for the first 5 issues, or is that still being in the works?
I don't know what those are going to be yet. I mean, I'm pretty sure the standard issues there'll be a common standard price, like $4.99 or whatever. And then there's definitely going to be variant covers and
right,
all that stuff.
I mean, only reason I ask is because like Kickstarter has its own nuances and things like that, and so does BACKERKIT. So that's why I thought I'd throw that out there, because I figured somebody was going to ask. But I mean,
I'm down to I'll be down to sign everything on Kickstarter if that's something. I'm sure. I don't know if there's going to be a tier where you can buy the signed version or not or whatever, but I'll be here to do whatever.
Perfect.
And I'm also going to be at Tucson Comic-Con. I don't know if this will air by then, but I'll be at Tucson Comic-Con the end of the month.
Okay.
So I might have some of the ash cans there.
I'll get this up before the end of the month. So yeah, cool. Well, we're coming up on the 1 hour mark, and I know you're kind of in the middle of your work day. So unless there's anything else you want to discuss, shout out, talk about, I think we're pretty much where we need to be, and I'll do some work on my end to spread the word on this amazing comic book project coming up.
Yeah, no, dude, please, thank you very much for having me. I'd say anybody, please share. Don't hesitate to share pictures you find online, post stuff. Let's get everybody talking.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for not only everything that you did in historically with Devil's Due Publishing, because while you are still indie, your like independent name is kind of growing now. You know what I mean? Like, people tend to, quality wise of story, they tend to hold it up in high regard with some of the larger publishers. So
it happens when you get older.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we did.
Away. No, thank you.
Yeah. Right.
I'll get over my Ohio upbringing and learn how to take a compliment.
Awesome. Well, all right. Thanks for all your time. And we'll just cut it off right here. I'll put some links to your social media and the Devil's Due website, unless you want me to put anything else in the description below.
No, and just send people also to the massive
yes, I'll put that as well. Ordinarily, I ask the guests where I can find you, but I think I have those already, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget anyone. So, all right, cool. Thanks for your time, and we'll call it right there. Have a good one, and don't forget to support the project, everyone. Take care. Bye.